Good afternoon. Hope you're having a good day. This week's Torah portion is the portion of Shemot, the first portion in the book of Exodus, where we read about the beginning of the Jewish exile, such a dark time for the Jewish people, the first exile of the Jewish people, and the first time we read about anti-Semitism in the Torah. But with the darkness, there's a light, because we read about the birth of Moses, the first Jewish leader, and the greatest Jewish leader that we always read about and refer to as the pinnacle of Jewish leadership. When the Torah introduces us to Moses, the Torah begins with two stories. The first story is that Moses, he's in the basket, and Batya, Pharaoh's daughter, sees him and rescues him and brings him to Pharaoh's palace. He grows up in opulence. He grows up in the palace of Pharaoh. And he gets older, the Torah tells us. And the first story the Torah tells us that he goes outside and he sees one day, he sees the pain of his brothers, Vayar b'siv loisam. And he watches an Egyptian beating a Jew. And it says he looked here and there and he saw there was no one there. And he struck the Egyptian and killed him and buried him there. The second story we hear is the second day. He walks out and he sees two Jews fighting. And he says to one, "Why are you hitting your brother? Wicked person, why are you hitting your brother?" And he answers him, he says, "Oh, you think we didn't see what you did yesterday? You want to kill us too?" And Moses realizes that everyone knows the story of what he did. Although the day before it says he looked here and there to make sure no one was there, the story was revealed. And Moses is worried. But two things I want to touch on today. Firstly, the first story the Torah tells us about is Moses having the courage to go out of his comfort zone. Moses grew up in the palace. Moses could have stayed in the palace and he could have said, forget about worrying about his brothers and sisters. He has to take care of himself. But the true Jewish leadership was Moses going out to see Vayar b'siv loisam. And he saw their pain. He saw their suffering. He realized that in order to be a Jewish leader, you have to be there for your brothers, for your sisters. You have to get out there. You have to be ready to speak up for their pain, for their suffering, for their challenges. But it's interesting because in day one, the Torah says that he looked here and there and he saw there was nobody there. But yet day two, the two Jews fighting tell him, "You think we didn't see what you did yesterday? So was there no one really there?" And the rabbis tell us a remarkable idea from Ethics of Our Fathers. Usually, people look around and they want to know if they should stand up for something. And they say, no one else is standing up, why should I? No one else is voicing their opinion, why should I? But in Ethics of Our Fathers, it says, B'makom she'ein ish. When there's no one else, tishtadel liot ish. When no one else speaks up, when no one else stands up for truth, when no one else stands up for the underdog, when no one else stands up to terror, tishtadel liot ish, have the courage to speak up. And that's what happened. Vayar ki ein ish. Moses saw, not that there was no one standing there, but he saw that no one else had the courage to stop this senseless persecution of Jews, this senseless suffering of his brethren. And therefore, Moses said, "It's time for me to rise. I can't wait for someone else to do this. But I see so much blatant anti-Semitism and suffering that I will speak up, that I will stand up." And that's the epitome of a Jewish leader. And that's what makes Moses the first Jewish leader. The Torah specifically tells us that story to tell us something about leadership, about being like Moses. Fast forward 3,500 years. We live in America today. We see so much suffering of our brethren. Ready to speak up? Are we ready to be counted? Are we ready to be heard, even when no one else is ready to speak up? It's a remarkable story about this rabbi who, one of his congregants, lost his wife tragically. And a little while later, he made a wedding. And the day of the wedding comes, and he comes home after the wedding, and he's sitting at home, and he hears a knock on his door. It's midnight. And the rabbi walks in, and he's shocked. It's rabbi's an older person. What's his rabbi coming to visit him so late? And the rabbi sits down and says, "You have some tea?" He brings his rabbi tea, and the rabbi says, "Tell me, how was the wedding? Who came? How many tables did you have? How was the food? How was the decor?" On and on. He spends a half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, and then he gets up to leave. He makes a blessing after his food. He gets up to leave. And as they're walking out, the man looks to the rabbi and says, "I don't understand." He says, Why are you coming? You could have asked me this tomorrow in temple or next time you saw me. Why did you come in the middle of the night to ask me all these questions and to engage in this conversation. And the rabbi looks at him and says, you see, when a person marries off their child, the whole wedding they're busy entertaining the guests, making sure everything comes home, goes right. They come home, and when they come home, they finally get, late in the night, 12, 1 o'clock, they get to sit down with their spouse and talk about the wedding, talk about the simcha, who was there, who came, what did they eat, how the food was, how the photographer was, how the videographer was. He says, I knew that you would have no one to talk to because your wife passed. And I wanted to make sure that you could have that same custom and you could sit and discuss the wedding with me. When there's someone else missing, it's our job to stand up and fill in. Let our voices be heard. Speak up for truth with empathy to those who need it, and especially for our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land of Israel. Have a great day.